Good afternoon and welcome to the Appropriations Committee of the Maryland House of Delegates. My name is Maggie McIntosh. I chair the Appropriations Committee. We're joined by Delegate Mark Chang, Vice Chair, and the members of the committee. The agenda for today, March 9th, 2021, is as follows. We will hear the following bills. House Bill 1341, House Bill 1301, House Bill 1172, House Bill 1067, House Bill 850, House Bill 1215, and House Bill 1336. And we will begin today with House Bill 1341, and presenting the bill will be Patrick Hogan from the University of Maryland System of Maryland. Patrick?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Again, for the record, Patrick Hogan with the University System of Maryland. I will be very brief, and you should already have our written testimony. House Bill 1341 is our annual departmental bill, which authorizes the use of $30 million of academic facilities bonds for the purposes of financing vital construction, renovation, or renewal projects across all of our campuses. And you've passed similar bills, I think, every year for about the last 20 years. And we are asking you to give a favorable report to this bill again. And that is all I will say. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Hogan? I see none, so we are going to be brief with you today. Looks like he wants to do it one more time, make it 21 years or so being here. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 1341. We're now going to move to House Bill 1301. I welcome back the chair of the Baltimore City delegation, my chair, to present 1301, which is Baltimore City Visit Baltimore Appropriations Calculation. Delegate Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good.
Whoop. You're on mute.
Oh, I apologize. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, and to my colleagues on the Appropriations Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Stephanie Smith, and I'm here to present to you House Bill 1301 on behalf of Baltimore City's administration. Visit Baltimore is a destination marketing organization, probably very similar to ones in your jurisdiction. And it focuses on helping Baltimore City to bring tourists and events to our city from across the world. And as you're all aware, the pandemic has really hurt and impacted the tourism industry quite acutely. And of course, this has affected Visit Baltimore's funding stream. See, in Baltimore City, Visit Baltimore is funded greatly, almost entirely through hotel taxes. About 40% of them, of the receipts, go to fund Visit Baltimore. So in light of this, Visit Baltimore and the Baltimore City administration have worked to explore options for easing the impacts of the pandemic on the agency's funding model and to safeguard any future instability from really impacting the bottom line. So House Bill 1301 is the summation of those discussions. So this bill would change the funding calculation for Visit Baltimore from a 1-year projected receipt model to a 3-year actual rolling average. That shift would streamline the funding process and smooth out any year-to-year extreme fluctuations. So, without further ado, I do hope that I can get a favorable report on House Bill 1301 and also offering an amendment to, I believe that committee staff already has that would just have the funding model begin occurring on July 1st of 2022. So with that, I thank you for your time and urge a favorable report on House Bill 1301.
Are there any questions of the sponsor? I see none. I do have one question, Delegate. So this would begin in FY20, the year FY22. So it would not. It would include 20 and 21. in that calculation. Is that correct?
Yes, based on the amendment, it would.
Yes, okay. Just checking.
No, not a problem.
Very
Thank you
much.
for the question.
Thank you. We now have Al Hutchinson from Visit Baltimore. We have Natasha Mayhew from the Mayor's Office of Government Relations. And is Lamar Robinson here from your committee, delegate?
Oh, I believe he probably signed me up and it may reflect his name instead of mine. My apologies.
That's okay. So let's bring up Natasha and Al.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Natasha Mayhew here on behalf of the Baltimore City Administration in support of House Bill 1301. I want to thank Delegate Smith for sponsoring this bill on our behalf. As she had discussed, it does change the funding calculation for Visit Baltimore to that 1 year, from the 1 year projected receipts model to the 3-year actual rolling average. And so one of the issues with this under the current funding process is that when they receive a 1 year allocation of projected receipts, these receipts are later audited, and any overages or shortfalls are either paid to Baltimore City or to Visit Baltimore. And that occurs 2 years after the two fiscal years after collection. And that funding model is reviewed every 5 years, with the next one scheduled for 2022. So as has been mentioned, the pandemic has just devastated those year-to-year calculations and put that funding in flux. So we hope to never get hit by another pandemic like this, but you never know what the future has in store. So we worked very closely with Visit Baltimore to come to an agreement on moving to a 3-year actual receipt model to help ease those fluctuations and prevent, so that we're prepared for unanticipated or historic events. The bill also extends the funding for Visit Baltimore to 2027, so it does not need to be renewed again in 2022. As the sponsor mentioned, the technical amendments just ensure that this goes into effect in July 1st, 2022. And that was a piece that had been a result of ongoing negotiations with the city and Visit Baltimore. And so with that, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 1301. Thank you.
Al?
Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Delegate Smith, for sponsoring this bill. I'll just quickly say that all of you all know that travel and tourism is arguably the second or third largest economic engine in Baltimore City, very important economic driver, and the pandemic has decimated this industry. So this bill really allows us to stabilize our funding in the future so we can help put folks back to work in the travel business and really get back to the business of promoting Baltimore City and the state of Maryland. So I believe this is a very creative way for us to really stabilize our funding stream, not only in FY22, but for the future. So in case there is any kind of crisis that may come up, that we have a much more sustainable funding model moving forward. So I appreciate the support on this and ask for the support of Bill 1301. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Al, how many convention centers are there in Maryland?
In Maryland, to my knowledge, 2.
All right. What's good for Baltimore? Is it good for Ocean City?
Absolutely. It's what's good for here is good for Prince George's County and National Harbor. We're about bringing business to Baltimore City, but it definitely has a indirect impact on what happens in the state of Maryland.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any questions of Mr. Hutchinson? Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. That concludes the bill hearing on 1301. We're now going to move to House Bill 1172. Pay it forward.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you for having me here and listening to this bill. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and honorable members. I'm very nervous today before you because I think this is really a bill that has great potential to address a chronic and increasing problem for us in Maryland, which has to do with the rising costs of higher education and how do we get around that, particularly coming out of a pandemic where people more and more evaluating what is the value of higher education and how can I afford to do that, and is it worth asking my family to be part of that commitment. Madam Chair, you may not remember this, but the very first bill I presented before your committee was back in 2015. And I offered a bill to create a task force to study the viability of pay it forward as a model for Maryland. And you kindly invited me to join on a summer study group that was looking at higher education funding. And as I recall, the major problem with pay it forward, which for those who don't know, is instead of a debt financed loan system, it uses income share agreements and other things to look at the income that someone gets after they graduate and takes a percentage of that on a contractual back to allow the next person coming through to have money to pay for their education, thus pay it forward. The big problem with the opportunity to do it was that someone, meaning the state of Maryland, was going to have to come up with millions of dollars to initiate this program because we had to pay for the education in advance and then wait maybe a decade or two for those people to pay back enough money to sustain the program. Well, things have come a long way in the last 6 years, and entrepreneurs, not entrepreneurs, that's the wrong word, philanthropic organizations and individuals, people like Robert Smith and his SFI initiative, people like Bloomberg, who started the Greenwood Initiative with the historically Black medical schools, people like Mackenzie Scott are coming forward with money that is really designed to free us from this, centuries long economic and wealth gap that has people, striving to get a foothold while being dragged behind. And so what this bill would do would set up a pay it forward fund and a pay it forward program through MHEC that would solicit philanthropic dollars to start that kind of initiative here. And it's designed as written to serve students as an option to taking out loans would be to participate in this program. And for those who don't understand what ISAs are, the MHEC would set up what the criteria are, but as an example, it might say that everybody who borrows from this fund agrees that they will pay 3% of their income for the next 20 years after graduation. So if their degree gets them a $50,000 a year income on average, they'll pay 3% of that back into the fund. If they're Bill Gates and their income averages out to, $500,000, then they're going to be paying 3% back into the fund. So it really allows people to put back in, not based on what they borrowed so much, but based on what the value of that education gained them. So that's essentially what this bill does. It just says, let's go ahead and start the program and let's look for those philanthropic dollars to do it. There are a couple of amendments that we have requested that I would want the committee to take up. I think that they can, hopefully answer some of the questions that may be there. The amendments include, I'm just going to pull this up real quick, the expansion of the program beyond the HBCUs so that any college in Maryland could take advantage of it. And again, it's open to the students, and the way the bill is written, a student who's attending one of the HBCUs would be eligible to participate in the program. Another amendment would direct MHEC, and I think this would be a critical amendment, to actually work with experts in the field of income share agreements to design what our program should look like. One of those groups would be, for instance, would be Education Finance Institute, which I consulted with in coming up with this bill, or Lumina Foundation. These are well-respected groups They've been doing this work, and there are colleges in the country now that have income share agreements that they're using to change the way that they finance higher education. Another would clarify that the Pay It Forward Fund would solicit philanthropic and not entrepreneurial underwriting, because the goal is for the fund and the program to be self-sustaining, not to necessarily return a profit for its investors. And the final amendment that I would suggest the committee would take up would require a set aside, and I think this is really critical, of at least 10% or more if MHEC would determine it, because what the donors want to know is that if they're giving their money, the program's going to be successful. And so the challenge was, how do we get the state to kind of do an insurance underwriting of a program like this? And that was a really hard one, because again, the state would have to put up money that frankly we don't have right now. But by saying of all the monies donated, we're going to set aside maybe 10 or 15% that cannot be spent on these education financing or on maintaining the program itself. What we're saying is that if for some reason the pilot program doesn't work or the fund doesn't work, those philanthropic groups are not going to be damned.
Thank you.
Everything, and those students who participated in the first years are not going to be held liable. I'm going to stop there, Madam Chair, and I thank you for this opportunity, and I hope that you'll work with me and the committee will work with me to really see if we can get this thing going.
Are there any questions? The sponsor. I have three. We'll start with Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Hill, for bringing this bill. Did any of the caucuses support this bill?
I don't have word. I know that we requested the Black Caucus, Latino Caucus to support the bill, and I don't have word on whether that was those decisions were made.
I believe the Black Caucus supported the bill. I was looking at the testimony that came in from the university system, and they raised a few concerns. I wanted to give you an opportunity to address them.
Thank you.
One of the concerns that they raised was that the students wouldn't be required to participate in the fund. So basically the fund would potentially lapse due to not having adequate support if all the students weren't required to participate. What's your opinion on the longevity of the fund?
Right. So I think that we want this to be an option for students. There are students who only need to take out very small loans, and that's better for them, and they're not interested in betting on what their future income is. And I think that the fund is self-sustainable because the people who participate have agreed to that. And if I may go a little bit further, there are a number of different models where I think it's critical to work with groups who've done this before as we set up a model here in Maryland. One of the models, like the one that the Robert Smith group is looking at, only looks at people who are seniors. The idea is that those are folks who are closer to being able to send money back to the fund. The problem is that when you look at seniors, they've already maxed out on their federal loans and other things. So they have a very complex repayment obligation, and it makes it very hard for them to do what they should be doing with this fund. If we start with students who are at an earlier point, and I recommend, say, sophomores, because I think we want to have students who've at least completed 1 year of higher education, so we know that they have the commitment and the ability to continue on, that they don't have that complexity. So when they finish, potentially they would get the funding in sophomore year, they continue through junior year, senior year, maybe into graduate school. That's the only commitment that they have to pay. They don't have Pell Grants, they don't have other things that will pull their income in different directions. So I think that as an option, this actually will put Maryland schools at a competitive advantage. And it's much more sustainable, and the data shows that. I've submitted some additional information for you all to look at, that this is a sustainable model, much more sustainable than debt financed loans that we're doing now.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Delegate Hill, thanks for bringing the bill. This is very interesting. My question was tied to what happens? You kind of started talking about it being available to sophomores to the end, but what happens if they don't complete? Are they still on the hook for the 3% once they've agreed to the program?
Right, so it's a contract, and one of the things that MHAC will be charged with doing in designing the contract was determine what the floor and ceiling are. So they might determine that anybody below a certain income, in a given year, they don't have to repay during that year, that they're absolved of the contract for that period of time. They might determine if somebody has a significant, I don't know, maybe they have a stroke, when they're 30, and that changes everything, and now they're on public assistance, right? They might determine that their loans are no longer, or their contract is no longer collectible. There are some people who say that if you make a certain amount or above a certain amount, you shouldn't have to pay a percentage of that. I don't think that makes sense. I think if you happen to do extremely well, that 3% is exactly what's going to help this program, and we would not apply a ceiling to what that would be. So it really comes out to the design of the program. And the question that you're raising is exactly the kind of thing that MHAC, and I believe in consultation with the experts in the field, would need to answer, because we want it to be sustainable. We also want it to be reasonable and fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Delegate Kittleman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it sounds like an absolutely wonderful idea. But I had a couple of questions, and you may have gone over this and I simply missed it. But for someone who wants to participate in the program, is it an either or? In other words, if they do participate, they would not be able to get loans as well.
Great question. Thank you. So that really is up to the plan design. And as I had mentioned earlier, the plan that is now out, that the Robert Smith, and for those who don't know, Smith is the Black entrepreneur who in 2019 announced to the graduating class at Morehouse that he was paying off all their debt. He then came back in 2020 and set up this SFI initiative that would look and identify 11 HBCUs around the country and set up these kind of contracts to help them pay for their college education. Their format, and I think largely because it's based, they want to get returns as fast as possible, is looking at that last mile, people who've almost finished their education, but because they can't get that last bit, their 4 years become 5, 6, 7 years. So he's trying to get those folks finished up. We'll have a combination of loans. We might decide to do it different in Maryland, but people would not be required to participate. If they're going to the schools that are designated, they have an option of participating in this program or going with traditional loans. I suspect if the pilot proves positive, that this will become the model for funding higher education going forward. But we've got to be willing to try it. And we can't keep doing what we've been doing and expect to dig our way out of this hole.
I always like innovations. My other question is, how long do they pay?
That's a plan design. So I gave you an example of 3% for 20 years. It might be 10 years and you're paying less or more. As we know, the vast majority of people who contribute to the college loan indebtedness of trillions of dollars have loans of $5,000 or less. So, it's the folks who most need loans to finish their education because they have no other resources that are burdened with this heavy loan debt that is preventing them from becoming homeowners, preventing them to go on to other things, and really making them question why they bother to go to college at all. And for many of them, they never complete it because the cost of the loans and the debt indebtedness is too overwhelming.
Okay.
Thank you.
Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Hill, thank you for bringing the bill. I know this is an idea that's been out there for a little while, and I really like the nonprofit piece of it. The one question I had, just sort of to follow up on what you were just exchanging with Delegate Kittleman. So how is this looked on somebody's credit report? Is it considered the same type of debt? So it's not a traditional loan, but if you're paying 3 or 4% or whatever it is it considered sort of is it still an asset on somebody's credit report if they are applying for a house or for a car loan?
I can't answer you for sure, but my understanding from people speaking with the people at EFI is that it is viewed differently. This is it's a written contract, but you guys are in appropriations. Some of you may have experience with ISAs that are certainly greater than my experience, which is about like this. And you can better answer that question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And thank you, Delegate. I believe this concludes the bill hearing.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here. We're now going to move to House Bill 1067, Delegate Feldmark.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and committee members. I'm pleased to join you today to present House Bill 1067. And I'll start by thanking you again for this committee's consistent support of our community colleges. And I hope you'll see this bill as another important way to stand up for these critical institutions. Over time, the General Assembly has approved a variety of partial or full tuition waivers for certain community college students. Some to assist those in greatest need, such as foster care recipients or unaccompanied homeless youth. Some in gratitude for their service, such as active duty members or honorably discharged veterans of the U.S. Armed Forces. And some as recruitment incentives to fill critical workforce needs in healthcare. Each of these policy decisions was thoughtful and well-deserved. Collectively, however, they have come to pose a financial challenge for our community colleges. Just as in tax policy, when one person or group gets a break, the rest of us collectively make up the difference. If we at the state level don't make up the difference, then that burden falls to our community colleges, either creating additional strain for local funding, or unfortunately, ultimately, increasing tuition and fee demands on other community college students. House Bill 1067 allows the state to stand behind these policy decisions with the funding needed to implement them. I ask for your favorable report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
We had a great bill out on the floor this morning. Did you notice it on second reader? They expanded the homeless youth from unaccompanied to accompanied youth.
Right.
Very interesting. Are there
Great
any
initiative?
Yeah, it sure is. Especially in these times, right? Are there any questions of the sponsor? Well, I want to thank you personally for your advocacy for community colleges. And I hope that next week when we have the budget out on the floor, you'll smile over at the subcommittee chair. Well, actually,
I look forward to it.
He's in the annex, all right? He's in the annex and the education subcommittee and say, work well done, okay? There's a little hint for you.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. We have Brad Phillips here and Alex Butler who want to speak favorably on the bill.
I'll start.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, and I look forward to smiling along with the subcommittee and Delegate Feldmark when the budget comes out next week. But again, for the record, my name is Brad Phillips, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the Maryland Association of Community Colleges. And I also want to again thank Delegate Feldmark for sponsoring House Bill 1067, which is another one of those crucial pieces that will help college affordability for all of our students. Delegate Feldmark has given you a great description of the bill. Our community college presidents understand that the recipients of these tuition waivers are students that are very deserving and some of the most vulnerable populations to tuition costs. And we believe in helping them to achieve their educational goals and aspirations. These waivers go to the students who are, again, in foster care, homeless, disabled, and they really do deserve the support they get. But again, waiving the cost for these students does not make it free for community colleges, and we're now waiving approximately $10 million in mandated tuition waivers. On top of that, our colleges are providing about over $5 million for support services for some of these populations and additional costs. as Delegate Feldmark's already said, the people who end up having to pay these costs are your regularly enrolled students who have to pay an increased tuition cost. So if the state were to help pay for the education of these students, we think it could incentivize our colleges to actually work to incorporate additional students instead of having to face this dilemma of shifting the costs around to other students. Because tuition waivers shift this cost, they're simply not a desirable policy approach because it does impact our access and affordability mission. So providing the 10 million that's in this bill to support state mandated tuition waivers will create a sustainable public policy though, and we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Alex here. Alex.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Alex Butler with the Maryland Association of Counties here in support of House Bill 1067. I want to thank the sponsor, Delegate Feldmark, for the leadership on this bill. Free tuition at community colleges is a wonderful thing. It's empowered many individuals to access new career paths and opportunities. The state adds to that deserving list of groups eligible for free tuition, and unfortunately, community colleges do not always have the funding they need to make it happen. The bill increases state aid for community colleges and allows for more students to continue their educational goals. MACO believes that strong, well-funded community colleges contribute directly to Maryland's workforce and communities and will help Maryland continue to be a leader in education. We think that passing this bill is a reasonable step to ensure these programs can thrive and also limit the burden on local budgets. So with that, MACO urges a favorable report. And thank you very much, Madam Chair and the committee for your consideration.
Okay, we have a question from Delegate Kettleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It isn't a question. It's just I wanted to point out that the last two bills, last two very good bills were brought to this committee by members of the Howard County delegation, which we feel is a very good delegation. So I just wanted to give them credit.
Very good. Oh, we know how you're going to be voting. Any other questions? Again, thank you so much for being here today. And
Thank you.
Look forward to that smile across the room next week, okay?
Can't wait. Thanks.
Have a good day. We're now going to move to House Bill 850. Delegate Rosenberg, and Delegate Rosenberg has two bills. Let's begin with House Bill 850.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair and members of the Appropriations Committee. As this committee well knows, the Maryland Corps is a fiscal stepchild. It was created by action of the legislature in 2016, but it has never been funded, despite the best efforts of this committee and the legislature. There was money provided for in the FY 2017 budget, $150,000, which the governor chose not to spend, not to provide for the Corps. Last year, we tried a different route. We passed a bill that I sponsored and this committee favorably acted upon. The governor vetoed, we overrode the veto, which requires a mandate that there be $150,000 in the budget, but beginning with because of the veto override, can't be used until can't be done, doesn't become law, take effect until FY 23. So why is this bill before us? The American Recovery Plan. The legislation that passed the Senate on Saturday, and if I may, when Speaker Pelosi has her votes, will pass the House of Representatives, hopefully tomorrow, for those of us who support the bill and for the benefit of the state, contains $1 million projected that would be going to programs that are very suitable for the fund, for the Corps to administer. That would be the National Health Service Corps and the Nursing Corps. The heart of this bill now would be Section 2, as I'm proposing to amend it to be more specific than it is in the bill as introduced because we didn't have specific information. So the Corps is the natural entity in state government to administer the $1 million that is expected to come to Maryland for these important programs that are truly complement work that needs to be done to address COVID-19. And hopefully this would be an opportune way to jumpstart, to give birth, if I may say, to the stepchild that currently is the Maryland Corps. So as this committee did last year with similar legislation that would have benefited, would have funded the Maryland Corps, this year's bill says we've got federal money, administer it, and this is the right entity to administer it. It won't get lost. It's consistent with the statutory purpose of the Corps, and I would urge a favorable report with an amendment. Thank you. I don't hear you.
You're on mute, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I know. There it goes again. We have Rearman. Is Rearman here? There he is.
It's Rahman.
Yeah, and then after that, Christopher. Okay, you want to go?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Rahman Liaquat. My pronouns are he, him, his.
Yeah.
I'm from District 38B, and I am currently a sophomore at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC. My first semester of college, I interned at the Baltimore State's Attorney's Office. And this past summer, in an unprecedented global pandemic, I interned at the Maryland Office of the Public Defender. In both of my experiences interning, I'm sorry, I thought you raised your hand. In both of my experiences interning at both the Baltimore State's Attorney's Office and at the Maryland Office of the Public Defender, I experienced personal growth. I experienced what it means to be in a room of professionalism, networking, and most importantly, I learned to put into effect the academic knowledge and skills I've spent the last 13 years of my life trying to grasp. I learned how it's actually like to be a lawyer, and whether it's actually like a good fit for me, because I'll be spending the rest of my life trying to pursue this career. I also learned from this experience that experience does not pay the bills. From transportation to purchasing meals to buying a suit to fit the demands of professionalism, it is difficult. Students are already struggling to meet the financial burdens that a 4-year bachelor's degree requires them to do. And we should be working to alleviate the burdens, as I'm assuming that most of us here would not be here without experiencing the similar burdens that we had to as college students. The House Bill 1215 would provide more internship opportunities to students in liberal arts majors across the state of Maryland. And by creating and building the Maryland Opportunities Fund, more students who struggle with paid internship opportunities in non-technical majors will have the opportunity to actually experience what it feels like to be in the field of their study. I urge all of you to vote favorably for the House Bill of 1215. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Christopher.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Christopher Ledard. I am a student from Howard County. I'm a resident of District 9, and I am a youth commissioner on the Governor's Commission on Service and Volunteerism, but I would like to state for the record that I'm appearing here as an individual and speaking my own views. I'm just here to testify very briefly that I'm in support of House Bill 850 and many of the provisions Delegate Rosenberg has worked so hard to implement in this bill. But I also support a few amendments, namely there is some language in existing statute that is not directly addressed by this bill, but is related in the same statute that relates to Maryland Core Program Fund that's just unclarified and needs some addressing based on their relationship with the governors, with the commission, and getting more directly into the text of the bill. We support national service, or I support national service in any format, particularly the use of this federal money in ways that is effective, using existing structures to make sure that money is allocated correctly and all of that money is used up in its entirety towards our service programs. So in general, I support the idea of this bill. I think more engagement is needed, both with the commission and with other stakeholders to really fine tune how that funding is administered and those kinds of things, and engaging all of the community partners. But in general, I do support the thoughts behind this bill. So,
thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. This concludes the bill hearing. And we're now going to move to House Bill 1215.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the record, the first individual of those
stakeholders
was testifying to 1215 by mistake. No problem. I'm sure the committee heard his testimony. And there may be others also testifying for 1215. Second individual was testifying for 850.
Right.
One person ready to testify on 1215. So just want to straighten that out. It's no surprise that the first witness who testified on this bill before I did was from UMBC, because that is at the Shriver Center and as an entire campus, that is our focus of public service and helping students find their way into the job force. I said to the folks at UMBC, what should we be doing that we aren't doing? And one of the programs we have is a technology internship program. As this committee is familiar, because the bill came through the committee, genesis of that is Freeman Hrabowski, president at UMBC, did an op-ed in the Sun touting Boston's technology internship program. I said to him, shouldn't we try to do that here in Maryland? We agreed. We passed the bill. The first year we put it in, it wasn't funded until it became part of our Amazon 2, I think that's what it was called, Amazon 2.0 search. And it was part of the package that Governor Hogan put together to fund the technology internships. This program, what this bill proposes, is to expand that concept, because the technology internship program has been so successful in giving a foot in the door for good paying jobs in the Maryland for Maryland school graduates, not just UMBC. So that what this bill would do is expand that concept to the liberal arts, to provide students who are doing well in school, but don't have the in to get into the door with an internship, need the assistance of this program, need the stipend that this program would provide to get an internship that can get them into a first job post-graduation and become productive members of the Maryland academic and more economic community. So that's what this bill would do. The witnesses can give us more detail. And from
any questions of the sponsor? Okay, seeing none. Let's start with an institution you mentioned, Kayla Massey, UMBC.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Kayla Massey, and I am currently a junior dance major and information systems double major with a minor in entrepreneurship at UMBC. I'm a student leader at UMBC, where I serve and am an active member of the Association of Black Artists. I'm affiliated with the Center of Women in Technology, and I am also affiliated with the Center of Democracy and Civic Life. My ultimate goal is to combine my passion for dance and representation and my desire to serve others and start my own nonprofit organization in Maryland. Being from Maryland, it is my dream to begin helping youth in this area primarily. I'm currently interning at the International Association of Blacks in Dance, also known as IABD. I am a social media intern and in the Department of Marketing, and also help with the email marketing as well as websites. I have learned so much in this position already, and I know that I would not have necessarily been afforded the opportunity otherwise if it wasn't for the internship program I am a part of now. Having the opportunity to work in a professional setting and learn the ins and outs of an organization is extremely beneficial before I enter the workforce officially upon my graduation. Also, being able to receive pay for the work I do helps cover the living expenses that occur throughout the month for me. With all the uncertainty in the world, I don't believe that I would have been able to accept this position otherwise. And also considering that I am a junior, this is my third year in school, I am preparing for graduation. And upon graduation, I'm going into a economy and a workforce that isn't as stable because of the pandemic primarily. Organizations of all backgrounds should have access to funding to support their interns and move their mission forward. By creating and building the Maryland Internship Opportunities Program, more students who struggle with getting paid internship opportunities in non-technical majors will have the ability to have internship experiences, they will be able to experience internship opportunities.
Very good.
Internships allow you to allow stimulation of growth through outside of the classroom and in a professional setting. I urge you to support the HB 1215 and thank you for
your
opportunity.
Thank you for being here today. I'm going to need some help with a last name. First name is Reza. Anyone with that first name in the waiting room?
I know that they were in the waiting room and led into the meeting. They may be having technical troubles, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, I'll go next to Robin Lee.
Good
Robin
afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for having me. I'm here to testify in support for House Bill 1215. And to introduce myself, I am the Executive Director of Baltimore Homecoming, a small nonprofit launched in 2017. Our work is centered around building relationships with local changemakers, the civic community, and the Baltimore expat community. So without jumping further into all the intricacies of what we do, we are a small organization. We are 2 full-time staff with a committed 8-person board, doing the work of typically teams staffed by many, many development professionals. And in the past few years, we've hosted several interns, several of which have been from UMBC, Go Dogs, where we have been able to add immeasurable capacity to our work. We also work with many small local organizations in our shoes, but I'll speak for ourselves. Small local organizations often rely on interns and volunteers that have been, and we've been especially hit hard by COVID-19 and the current economy. Our board, not surprisingly, has asked us to cut non-critical costs from our 2020 to 2021 budgets. And of course, we've spent countless hours defending that our intern stipend is a critical cost, critical to providing our organization with the bandwidth it needs to achieve our mission, and critical to make our internship opportunity equitable and accessible to students by removing financial barriers. While budget constraints create challenges with recruiting interns, offering compensation incentivizes student candidates, especially students those in arts and humanities, to pursue enriching non-traditional roles like those with startups like ourselves and other social enterprises. House Bill 1215 helped lift these crucial sectors in our region while helping students gain access to career building opportunities. So with that, in short, I am in support of House Bill 1215. I urge every members of the committee to support as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tom Sadowski.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Committee. My name is Tom Sadowski, Vice Chancellor for Economic Development for the University System of Maryland, and urging your favorable report on House Bill 1215. I applaud Delegate Rosenberg's sponsoring of this bill, much like I do his creation of the Maryland Tech Internship Program, which he spoke of. That program alone has helped place over 600 students in internships, and those students represent over 27 different institutions from throughout Maryland, and that's in less than 3 years at work. So that program is doing its job. The Massachusetts example that he had mentioned, that program's been really successful in helping retain some of their best and brightest. This bill would help do the same. Keep our best and brightest from a vast array of different backgrounds here in Maryland, helping to grow our startups, our small businesses, and help provide much needed talent to our nonprofits and service agencies who otherwise couldn't afford these students. These students couldn't afford to take non-paying internships as well. So that helps put them on a path to success and continue to contribute to our economy. The university system, we help to foster the creation of 110 new startups each and every year. It's widely reported in national studies that startups tend to stay in those markets where they first receive help, mentorship, and support. This goes in that category. If they can get the right kind of talent for a subsidized cost, that helps them to grow. That helps them to meet their bottom line, which is constantly challenged with a number of different costs related to staying in business. And as they survive, up to 80% of those companies will stay in those communities where they first received support. So this bill is important from that perspective as well. Industry loves our talent base. We help award 80% of Maryland STEM degrees each and every year. That's more than 12,000 STEM degrees. And industry, as I said, loves our graduates, but they also need technical skills. They need those graduates to possess technical skills. So they look to these types of programs to help afford those kinds of skills. My colleagues at Bowie are doing a great job placing students even before they graduate. And oftentimes those students are hired before they graduate and are able to cover the costs of graduation with the benefit of a full-time job, what provided through Google or Cisco or some other major tech firm. So industry wants our talent, but they also need them to possess these kinds of technical skills that they develop and they receive through these internship programs. Finally, this is going to help. I talked about the 600 internships through the Maryland Tech Internship Program. This opportunity internship program is going to help expand the realm of internship opportunities and go well beyond the students that we're serving today. So not only a more diverse field of potential interns, but even more industry sectors covered. So this really is going to help our economy grow. It's going to help our startups stay here and grow and purchase services and equipment from each other. And it's really going to give this economy a shot in the arm and help develop and nurture a sustainable, innovation-led economy going forward. So with that, I really appreciate your consideration of House Bill 1215, and I urge your favorable report. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you. Before I go on, I need to recognize also Delegate Ivy. You're here from Ways and Means, am I right? Listening to this bill, thank you, and welcome to Appropriations Committee. All right, I have another person here whose name I'm going to need help with, and its first name is Pramod.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Pramod Raheja, and Madam Chairman, I'll make it easier for you. My nickname is Mode, and I'm here to support House Bill 1215. I am a serial entrepreneur. I'm a product of Maryland. I grew up in Prince George's County, went to science and tech school, STEM, went to the University of Maryland, studied engineering. And I will tell you, and you're not going to want to hear this, but I always thought Virginia was the place to do business, until I started Airgility here in College Park, Maryland, 3.5 years ago. Met my co-founder, Evandro Valente, while he was a professor at the university, and he was working on some prototypes. And you're not going to hear this either. He was working with unpaid interns. So now in the 3.5 years since starting our company, We could have gone bust many times, but we are on a path to major success. We've also been asked by our advisors through TEDCO and Maryland Industrial Partnerships, who we love all the programs here in Maryland. Why are you still here in Maryland? Because all successful tech companies leave. They go to Austin, Boston, Silicon Valley, New York. But as I think it was Tom that just pointed out, most companies that start, they stay where they are. And we intend on doing that as well for the long term. And that long-term growth and success is a win-win for us and everybody, including the state of Maryland. So here to talk to you about the Maryland Technology Internship Program. In the last year that we've been working with that, we have supported 18 interns. We have converted 5 of those to full-time hires, including 2 that are currently supervising interns, other interns. We've put in about $50,000 into this, and the support of MTIP, or Maryland Technology Internship Program, was $24,000. And the thing I want to say, and I want to point out, is that we couldn't have done that without this help. We would have never hired that many interns. So MTIP really gives us the opportunities to hire across a range of disciplines, from aerospace, mechanical, electrical, robotics, AI and computer engineering, computer science, sales enablement, digital marketing. Even the business world is technology-based nowadays. So MTIP has really been a pathway for us, for a technology-based business like ours, to recruit these interns with the strong skills. And I think Tom also pointed out the talent that comes out of the universities. Many of them leave. So really, if you want to keep jobs here and companies in Maryland, I would urge you to strongly support HB 1215, House Bill 1215, because it really does expand experiential learning opportunities for students, supports technology-based businesses like ours, encourages us to stick around, and it truly provides a pathway for hiring converting them into full-time positions, and then kind of keeping that next generation of talent here, because the companies that stay here and now the students want to stay here. So it's kind of a thing that just goes around and around in a circle. And I think we can start that circle and by supporting this bill. Thank you.
Delegate Krim, you had a question?
Yes, Madam Chair. To either the bill sponsor or to the witnesses, can you tell me, I mean, it sounds like a wonderful program. I love internship programs. How do we track data here? How do we know who's getting the benefits of something like this? Do we do that?
Yes, we do. If I could, Delegate. UMBC does a great job of tracking all the performance metrics of the program. They can tell you where the students have been placed, and they survey the students on their experiences too, and their likelihood to remain either in that field or within the state of Maryland themselves. So they do a great annual report. They know that the little bit of money that they do get for this program, they have to be able to show return on investment. So they do a fantastic job of tracking activity of the program. So
and who is that again? I didn't catch who that is. Who's
Christine Rudizon at UMBC. And again, UMBC runs this program, but it's available to students throughout Maryland.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is Risa back in the room?
No, ma'am.
Okay. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 1215. And thank you, Delegate Rosenberg, by the way.
Thank you.
To our last bill of the day, I have to leave you for another meeting, and the vice chair will take over. But I wanted to say to the committee, please watch your emails because we're going to have a meeting sometime tomorrow midday to talk a little bit about the schedule for the budget rollout. And I just want to make sure all of you are available. So just check your emails, okay? We'll be sending that out in the morning. Thank you very much. And Vice Chair, you take over.
Next, we'll move on to House Bill 1336, Delegate Proctor, Alcohol and Tobacco Commission Executive Director clarification. Delegate Proctor, thank you very much for being here. Please proceed when you're ready. Delegate Proctor, we can't hear you. Try to unmute Delegate Proctor.
She doesn't appear to be muted. She may be having technical difficulties.
Delegate Proctor, is there a way to log out and zoom back in?
Hello?
Delegate Proctor's Mark.
I'm trying to get back in.
That's okay. How about this? Just put your video on and then just speak to the speakerphone. I have you on speakerphone.
Oh, okay.
So just put if you could turn your video back on and just speak to the speakerphone.
Okay. You still can't hear me, right?
We can hear you. Can the committee hear her? Okay, a little bit of an echo, but sorry about that. Delegate Proctor, please present your bill. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and colleagues. House Bill 1336. This bill has the support of the Retirement System, Alcohol and Tobacco Commission, Executive Director clarification. This bill requires that the Executive Director of the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission be a sworn police officer with certain powers. It also says the Executive Director must be a member of the law enforcement pension system. That is a requirement of the employment. It also requires the Board of Trustees for the retirement system to transfer certain service earned and to transfer certain contributions. We also have on this bill the fact that an individual who would be a secretary of a principal department or local head of a department of the unit of state government serving at the governor's pleasure has immediate vesting rights on taking office in the state system. This again has the support of the retirement system, and I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you very much, Delegate Proctor. Joining us today, we have Miss Ann Gothrop with the State Retirement Agency. Delegate, I'm sorry, excuse me, Miss Gothrop, please proceed when you're ready.
I'm just here to answer any questions. So on the amendment that Delegate Proctor spoke about, so I can just sit back quietly while Mr. Kelly testifies unless there are any questions for me.
Great, thank you very much. And we do have Mr. Jeff Kelly here from the Comptroller's Office.
Good afternoon.
Thank you,
Mr. Vice Chairman. It's good to see you, members of the committee. Thank you. My name is Jeff Kelly. I find myself in an unusual position of supporting and representing myself on this particular bill. What happened in 2019, the Maryland General Assembly passed House Bill 1152, and in doing so created the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission with the intent of taking those two industries, the regulatory authority from the comptroller, to an independent commission. And it was a pretty big bill, and it's a lot of moving parts. And the General Assembly at the end added several additional sections after the text of the main text of the bill. And one of those was to ensure that all people who left the comptroller and went to the commission kept their pension, their benefits, their salary, and all other things that they've earned over the years. And then, but it's a big bill, as I mentioned, and there were a few things that needed to be corrected. So last year in 2020, there was another bill introduced that provided some clarification, and it did a pretty good job of clarifying a lot of the issues. But in further defining certain things, my reading of the bill was that it excised me in particular from continuing in my pension plan, which I've been in the law enforcement officer's pension plan for coming up on 19 years, and it eliminated me from that. I contacted Mr. Kennardine just to verify that maybe my reading of this was correct, and in hopes that maybe it was, and he thought also that it was. So I contacted the front office of the comptroller's office, and they met with the presiding officers of the General Assembly, with governor's staff as well, and everyone seemed at the time to think that was not what they intended to have happen, and so this bill was introduced. So I guess I'm asking for your support of House Bill 1336, if it's still the General Assembly's intent that everyone move over and remain whole and intact as they were previously under the comptroller. If not, I certainly understand if things have changed as well. But my ask and my request would be a favorable report of House Bill 1336. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or Ms. Gothrop or Mr. Kelly? Seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 1336. And on behalf of House Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Maggie McIntosh, that concludes today's virtual bill hearing. Have a great day.